Zoe's hands trembled as she stared at the shattered pieces of the crystal champagne flute on the marble floor. The grand ballroom of the Houston Biltmore Hotel was dead silent. 300 of the city's elite were staring right at her. She had just failed. Again. "Miss Carter!" A cold, deep voice echoed through the silent room. Zoe swallowed hard and looked up. Standing at the top of the grand staircase was Darius Vance. He wore a custom black suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. His dark eyes were locked onto hers, cold and unforgiving. The Ice King of Houston had arrived, and he did not look happy. I can explain," Zoe stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "The tray slipped. The floor was polished. It was too slick." "I do not pay you for explanations, Zoe," Darius said, his voice smooth but sharp as glass. He walked down the stairs, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the marble. Each step made Zoe's heart pound faster. "I pay you for perfection. And you are a disaster." He stopped right in front of her. He was so tall he blocked out the light from the chandelier. Zoe braced herself to be fired. She needed this job. Her mother's community center needed this money. Darius looked at the broken glass, then back down at her terrified face. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then the unthinkable happened. The corner of Darius's mouth twitched. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a black velvet box, and dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the ballroom. The crowd gasped. Jin Park, standing at the bottom of the stairs, actually dropped his tablet. "Darius, what are you doing?" Zoe whispered, her eyes wide with shock. "You are a disaster, Zoe Carter," Darius said, his dark eyes locking onto hers with a strange, intense fire. "You fail at everything you touch. Which makes you the only person in this city who is unpredictable enough to be my fake wife." He snapped the box open. A massive, flawless diamond caught the light. "Marry me," he commanded softly, "or I will buy your mother's community center and turn it into a parking lot by tomorrow morning." Zoe felt the blood drain from her face. How did she go from dropping a tray of champagne to being held hostage by a billionaire? Before we dive into Zoe's incredible journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Trust me, you will want to see what happens next. Now, let's begin. To understand how Zoe ended up on her knees in a ballroom, you have to understand the weight she was carrying. Zoe Carter was 24 years old, and she was tired. She was the director of the Evelyn Carter Youth Center, a small, struggling community hub in Houston's historic Third Ward. Her mother, Evelyn, had built the center from nothing. It was a safe haven for kids in the neighborhood, a place filled with laughter, art, and hope. But Evelyn had passed away suddenly 6 months ago, leaving Zoe with the center and a mountain of debt. The center was facing foreclosure. The bank was going to auction it off in exactly 30 days. Zoe had taken every event planning job she could find to pay the bills, but Zoe had a curse. Things went wrong around her. Trays slipped. Tents collapsed. Microphones short-circuited. She was a walking disaster zone, which was why she was currently sitting in the back of a sleek black Maybach, speeding away from the Biltmore Hotel, sitting next to the most intimidating man in Texas. Darius Vance did not look at her. He stared out the tinted window, his jaw tight. The car was heading toward the Energy Corridor, the massive business district in West Houston where Darius's company, Vance Vanguard, had its headquarters. "Speak," Darius said suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of the car. Zoe jumped. I already said I was sorry about the champagne. I will pay for the glass. I will pay for the carpet cleaning." "I do not care about the glass, Zoe," Darius interrupted, finally turning his dark eyes toward her. "I care about the merger. The Lee family conglomerate is flying in from out of state tomorrow. They are traditional, very traditional. The patriarch, Mr. Lee, refuses to sign a multi-billion-dollar real estate and tech merger with an unmarried man. He believes single men are reckless. He wants a family man." Zoe blinked, trying to process the information. "So, you need a wife." "I need a prop," Darius corrected coldly. "I need a woman to stand by my side, smile for the cameras, and convince the Lees that I am settled. I interviewed 12 women today, socialites, models, CEOs. They were all too eager. They all looked at my bank account and drooled. If I marry one of them, they will try to take over my life. I need someone who doesn't want me. I need someone who is entirely focused on something else." He paused, his gaze dropping to her worn-out sneakers. "You need $300,000 to save your little community center in the Third Ward. I will give you $500,000. In exchange, you will wear this ring, live in my penthouse, and play the role of my devoted fiancé for exactly 3 months. When the merger is signed, we will announce a tragic breakup. You will take the money and disappear." Zoe's heart hammered against her ribs. $500,000. It was more than enough to save the center and keep it running for years. But live with Darius Vance. The man was a machine. He had no heart, no warmth, no mercy. "Why me?" Zoe asked, her voice shaking. "If you just need someone who doesn't want you, why not hire an actress?" "Because actresses are good at pretending," Darius said smoothly. "You, Zoe Carter, are terrible at everything. You are clumsy. You are chaotic. You are a spectacular failure. No one will ever suspect that a disaster like you is part of a calculated corporate scheme. You are the perfect cover." The words stung like a slap. Zoe looked down at her hands. He was right. She was a failure, but she was a failure who was about to lose her mother's legacy. She took a deep breath and looked him in the eye. "I have conditions." Darius raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "You are in no position to make conditions." "Condition 1, Zoe said, her voice gaining strength. "You never speak about my mother's center like it is a little place. It is the heart of the 3rd Ward. Condition 2, I keep my job. I will still plan events. Condition 3, you treat me with basic human decency. I am a prop, yes, but I am not a dog." Stared at her for a long moment. The air in the car felt thick. Finally, he gave a single, sharp nod. "Agreed. Welcome to the big leagues, Mrs. Vance." But why would Darius Vance, the most powerful man in Houston, choose a clumsy event planner who just ruined a $1 million gala? And what exactly was this mysterious merger that could make or break his empire? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because the truth about Darius's empire is much darker than it seems. Now, let's keep going. The Maybach pulled up to the valet at the base of a towering glass skyscraper in downtown Houston. This was Darius's personal residence, a penthouse that took up the entire top 2 floors of the building. When the private elevator doors opened, Zoe stepped out and gasped. The penthouse was massive. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking, panoramic view of the Houston skyline and the distant glow of the ship channel. But the interior was breathtaking in a cold, sterile way. Everything was black, white, and gray. The furniture was sharp and modern. There were no photos, no books, no color. It looked like a museum, not a home. "Wow," Zoe whispered. "It looks like a hospital." "It is efficient," a new voice said. Zoe turned to see a man standing by the kitchen island. He was Korean, in his early 40s, wearing a sharp gray suit and a sarcastic smirk. He held a tablet in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. "Zoe, this is Jin Park," Darius said, walking past her and shrugging off his suit jacket. "He is my CFO and my headache. Jin, this is Zoe. She will be living here." Looked Zoe up and down, his eyes lingering on her messy bun and the flour stains still on her apron from the bakery disaster earlier that week. "So this is the disaster," Jin said, his tone dry. "I expected someone, taller or at least holding a fire extinguisher." Zoe crossed her arms. "Nice to meet you too. I promise I won't burn the place down on the first day." Jin chuckled, taking a sip of his coffee. "Give it time. Darius, the legal team has drafted the cohabitation agreement. It is on the desk in the study. I will leave you two to settle in. I have a conference call with the Lee family's lawyers in 10 minutes. Jin gave Zoe a sympathetic look. "Try not to break anything expensive, sweetheart. Darius charges for emotional damages." With a wink, Jin walked into the elevator and disappeared. Darius walked over to a sleek black desk in the corner of the living room and picked up a thick stack of papers. He dropped them on the glass coffee table in front of Zoe. "Sign it," Darius commanded. "It outlines the rules. You get a generous allowance. You have access to the kitchen, the guest wing, and the gym. You do not enter my private bedroom. You do not touch my personal files. And most importantly, you do not fall in love with me. This is a business transaction. When it is over, you walk away." Zoe picked up the pen. Her hand hovered over the paper. She looked at the cold, hard lines of Darius's face. He really believed she was just a clumsy idiot who would be easy to control. She signed her name. "Good," Darius said, snatching the papers back. "Your things will be brought up from your car. Your room is down the hall on the left. We have a charity gala tomorrow night. The Lees will be there. You need to look the part. Jin will send a stylist." Darius turned and walked toward his private wing, leaving Zoe standing alone in the massive, cold living room. 2 hours later, Zoe was sitting on her bed in the guest room. The room was huge, with a king-sized bed and a bathroom bigger than her entire apartment in the 3rd Ward. But she felt incredibly small. She was thirsty. She walked out into the main living area. The penthouse was quiet. Darius was in his study, and Jin had gone home. Zoe walked into the massive, open-concept kitchen. It was a chef's dream. There were 2 ovens, a massive refrigerator, and a very complicated, shiny silver espresso machine that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. Zoe just wanted a simple cup of tea. But as she reached for a kettle, she noticed a box of expensive herbal tea blends on the counter. She decided to make herself a cup of the fancy tea using the hot water from the espresso machine. She pressed a few buttons. The machine beeped angrily. She pressed a few more buttons. The machine started making a loud grinding noise. "Come on," Zoe muttered, tapping the side of the machine. "Just give me some hot water." Suddenly, the machine hissed. A cloud of steam erupted from the top. Hot water and coffee grounds shot out like a geyser, spraying all over the pristine white marble countertop. It splashed onto the floor, and worse, it splashed onto a stack of leather-bound folders sitting on the edge of the island. "Oh no, no, no," Zoe gasped, grabbing a towel and frantically wiping the counter. "What is going on here?" Zoe froze. Darius was standing in the doorway of his study. He was wearing a black t-shirt that clung to his chest, his sleeves pushed up to reveal his forearms. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp as they landed on the mess. Zoe stood up, holding a dripping, coffee-stained towel. I just wanted some tea. The machine attacked me." Darius walked over slowly. He looked at the puddle of brown water on the floor. He looked at the espresso machine, which was now making a sad clicking sound. Then he looked at the leather folders. He picked up one of the folders. The cover was stained with coffee. He opened it, checking the papers inside. Zoe held her breath. This was it. He was going to kick her out. He was going to take the community center. "I am so sorry," Zoe said, her voice trembling. "I will clean it up. I will buy you a new machine. I will pay for the papers." Darius closed the folder. He set it down gently. He looked at Zoe. She braced herself for his anger. She expected him to yell, to call her a disaster, to tell her to leave. Instead, Darius let out a long, slow breath. He reached out, took the wet towel from her hand, and dropped it on the counter. "You are a menace, Zoe Carter," he said quietly. He walked over to the sink, wet a clean cloth, and handed it to her. "Wipe the floor." "I will call the repairman for the machine." Zoe stared at him, shocked. He wasn't yelling, he was helping. "Thank you," she whispered. Darius paused, looking at her over his shoulder. For a second, the cold mask slipped. His eyes softened just a fraction. "You are trying too hard to fix things, Zoe. Just let it be messy sometimes." He turned and walked back to his study, leaving Zoe standing in the kitchen, her heart doing a strange, nervous flutter. That night, sleep was impossible. The events of the day were swirling in Zoe's head. The proposal, the car ride, the massive penthouse, and the strange, quiet moment in the kitchen. Around midnight, she got up to get a glass of water. As she walked past Darius's private study, she noticed the door was slightly open. A soft, yellow light spilled out into the dark hallway. She knew the rules. Do not enter his private space. As she walked past, she glanced inside. Darius was not there. He must have gone to bed. Zoe stepped into the doorway. The study was lined with bookshelves and filing cabinets. On the large mahogany desk, a single lamp was still on. Next to the lamp was a thick manila folder. It was the same folder she had accidentally splashed with coffee earlier. Curiosity got the better of her. She stepped into the room and looked down at the desk. The folder was open. At the top of the first page, printed in bold black letters, was a name. Evelyn Carter, * Zoe's breath caught in her throat. Her mother's name. Her hands shook as she reached out and turned the page. It was a financial report, but it wasn't just any report. It was a detailed audit of the Evelyn Carter Youth Center. It showed every dollar of debt, every missed payment, and every bank transaction. But that wasn't what made Zoe's blood run cold. Tucked into the back of the folder was a photograph. It was a picture of her mother, Evelyn, standing next to a man. The man was not Zoe's father. The man was Darius Vance. And on the back of the photo, written in Darius's sharp, neat handwriting, were 3 words. She knew everything. Zoe stumbled back, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Darius knew her mother. He had a file on her. He knew about the center's debt. He hadn't chosen her for the fake marriage because she was a clumsy disaster. He had chosen her because he was hiding something. What did Darius know about Zoe's mother? And was this fake marriage actually a trap? Make sure you are subscribed, because the Ice King is about to melt, and the truth will change everything. Zoe's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She stared at the photograph in the dim light of the study. Her mother, Evelyn, smiling softly next to Darius Vance, and those 3 chilling words on the back. She knew everything. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, heavy, deliberate footsteps. Panic seized Zoe. She quickly shoved the folder back onto the desk, her hands shaking so badly she nearly knocked over the lamp. She slipped out of the study and pressed her back against the cold wall of the hallway just as the study door clicked open. Darius stepped out. He was wearing sweatpants and a plain black t-shirt, his hair slightly messy from sleep. He paused, his dark eyes scanning the dim hallway. For a terrifying second, Zoe thought he could see her heart beating through her chest. "Who is there?" Darius asked, his voice low and dangerous. Zoe held her breath. She slowly stepped out from the shadows, raising her empty hands. "It's just me. I couldn't sleep. I was getting water." Darius's eyes narrowed. He looked at her, then glanced back into the study. The desk lamp was still on. The folder was slightly out of place. He didn't say a word, but the temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Go to bed, Zoe," he said, his voice flat. "We have a long day tomorrow." He turned and walked back into the study, closing the door with a soft, final click. Zoe rushed back to her guest room and locked the door. She slid down against the wood, burying her face in her hands. Darius knew her mother. He had a file on her. He was hiding something massive, and she was trapped in his house, wearing his ring, pretending to be his fiancé. The next morning, the air in the penthouse kitchen was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Zoe sat at the massive marble island, pushing a piece of toast around her plate. Darius sat across from her, scrolling through his phone, sipping black coffee. He looked perfectly calm, perfectly put together in a sharp gray suit. It made Zoe's skin crawl. "You are quiet today," Darius noted, not looking up from his screen. "Nerves about the gala." "Something like that," Zoe muttered. Before Darius could reply, the private elevator chimed. Jin Park strolled in, holding 2 massive coffee cups and a tablet. He took one look at Zoe's pale face and Darius's stoic expression. "Ah, the morning after," Jin said, taking a seat next to Zoe. He handed her a coffee. "Drink this, you look like you saw a ghost. Or worse, you saw Darius before he had his coffee." "I'm always pleasant before coffee," Darius said dryly, finally setting his phone down. "Sure, pleasant like a shark circling a bleeding surfer," Jin shot back with a wink. He turned to Zoe. "Don't worry, sweetheart, the stylist is here. They are going to transform you into a high-society swan. Just try not to trip over your own dress." Zoe managed a weak smile. "I will do my best." An hour later, Zoe was standing in front of a floor-length mirror in her room. The stylist had worked magic. She was wearing a stunning emerald green silk gown that hugged her curves perfectly. Her hair was styled in elegant, sweeping waves, and her makeup was flawless. When she walked out into the living room, Darius was waiting. He was adjusting his cufflinks. When he saw her, his hands stopped moving. His dark eyes swept over her, and for a brief, fleeting second, the cold mask slipped. His gaze softened and his jaw tightened. "You look," Darius started, then cleared his throat. "You look acceptable, let us go." Jin snorted from the couch. "Acceptable? Darius, you look like you just forgot how to breathe. Let's just tell the girl she looks beautiful and get to the car." Darius shot Jin a lethal glare. "Get in the car, Jin." But what happens when the Ice King finally shows a crack in his armor, and a ghost from the past arrives to shatter it completely? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the gala tonight will change everything. Now, let's keep going. The charity gala was held at the Glass House, an exclusive high-end venue in the Energy Corridor. The building was a masterpiece of modern architecture, all sharp angles and glowing lights. When Darius and Zoe walked in, the room went quiet. Darius Vance was a celebrity in Houston, and seeing him with a woman on his arm was front-page news. He kept his hand firmly on the small of Zoe's back, guiding her through the crowd. His touch was warm, sending a confusing flutter through her stomach. "Smile," Darius murmured, leaning close to her ear. "The investors are watching." Zoe forced her lips into a bright smile, waving at a group of older women who were staring at her diamond ring. "I feel like a zoo animal," she whispered back. "You are a queen," Darius corrected smoothly. "Act like it." They were making their way toward the bar when a smooth, overly cheerful voice cut through the noise. "Darius, my man, I was wondering when you would show up." Zoe turned to see a tall, handsome white man in his mid-30s walking toward them. He wore a tailored navy suit and a smile that didn't reach his cold, calculating blue eyes. Darius's entire body went rigid. The warmth he had shown Zoe vanished, replaced by a wall of pure ice. "Trent." I see you are still wearing suits that cost more than your actual net worth." Trent Sterling laughed, but his eyes flashed with anger. "Always quick with a joke, Darius, and I see you brought a plus one. Who is the lucky lady?" "This is my fiancée, Zoe," Darius said, his voice dropping an octave. Trent's eyes landed on Zoe. He looked her up and down, a slow, mocking smile spreading across his face. "Zoe Carter, the event planner. I have heard so much about you, mostly about your spectacular disasters." Zoe's blood ran cold. She looked at Trent, really looked at him. The sudden power outages at her events, the vendors canceling at the last minute, the ruin tense. He is the one doing it, she realized with a sickening jolt. Trent Sterling is the one sabotaging me. "Hello, Mr. Sterling," Zoe said, keeping her voice steady. "I didn't realize my career was of such interest to you." "Oh, I keep an eye on everything that interests me, my dear," Trent said, stepping closer. He lowered his voice, but Zoe could still hear the venom. "Especially things connected to Evelyn Carter. It is a shame what happened to her center. Debts are such a heavy burden." Before Zoe could respond, Darius stepped smoothly between them, blocking Trent's view of her. "Excuse us, Trent," Darius said, his voice deadly quiet. "My fiancé and I need to greet the hosts." Darius guided Zoe away, his grip on her waist a little too tight. "Stay close to me," he muttered. "Trent is a snake, do not engage with him." Minutes later, Zoe needed air. The room was too hot and Trent's words were echoing in her head. She slipped away from Darius, who was talking to a group of board members, and stepped out onto the large, dimly lit balcony. The cool Houston night air felt amazing against her skin. She leaned against the glass railing, taking deep breaths. "Having fun, Zoe." Zoe jumped. Trent Sterling stepped out from the shadows of the balcony. He held a glass of whiskey, his blue eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "Leave me alone, Trent," Zoe said, standing up straight. "I know it is you. I know you are the one ruining my events. Why are you doing this?" Trent chuckled, taking a slow sip of his drink. "Ruining your events? Oh, sweetheart, I am just clearing the board. Your mother's center is sitting on prime real estate in the 3rd Ward. I need that land. And I need to send Darius a message." "Bullying me?" Zoe shot back. "By reminding Darius that he cannot protect the people he loves," Trent said, his smile fatting into a cruel sneer. He stepped closer, invading her space. "Your mother was a smart woman, Zoe, too smart. She dug into things she shouldn't have, and it cost her everything. If you don't give me what she left behind, I will take the center, and I will make sure you end up just like her." Zoe's breath hitched. "What did she leave behind? What are you talking about?" Trent leaned in, his voice a harsh whisper. "You know exactly what I am talking about, the ledger, the proof. Bring it to me by midnight tomorrow, or I will burn your little community center to the ground." Zoe's heart pounded. She opened her mouth to yell for security, but suddenly the glass door to the balcony slid open. Darius stood there. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. He crossed the balcony in 3 long strides, grabbed Trent by the collar of his expensive suit, and slammed him back against the glass wall. "Touch her again," Darius snarled, his voice vibrating with lethal intent, "and I will break every bone in your body. Are we clear, Trent?" Trent held up his hands, a mocking smile still on his face. "Just having a friendly chat, Darius. Let her go. We will talk tomorrow." Trent brushed himself off and walked back inside. Darius stood there, his chest heaving, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. He turned to Zoe, his eyes dark and stormy. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his voice rough. "I am fine," Zoe whispered, trembling. "Darius, what did he mean? What did my mother leave behind?" Darius closed his eyes, running a hand over his face. The anger drained out of him, leaving him looking suddenly exhausted. "Not here," he said softly. "Let us go home." "You thought the fake marriage was the biggest lie in this story? Wait until you hear the truth about Zoe's mother. Hit that subscribe button right now, because the secrets in this penthouse are about to blow everything wide open. Now, let's get to the truth. The car ride back to downtown Houston was completely silent. When they finally reached the penthouse, Darius poured himself a glass of whiskey. He didn't offer one to Zoe. He just stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the city lights. "Talk," Zoe said. She stood in the middle of the living room, her arms crossed. "No more secrets, no more files. Tell me everything, right now." Darius took a slow sip of his drink. He turned to face her. The cold, untouchable CEO was gone. In his place was a man carrying a massive, heavy guilt. 10 years ago, Darius began, his voice quiet. "Trent Sterling and I started our first tech firm. We were partners, but I was focused on the product. Trent was focused on the money. He started embezzling millions from our investors. I didn't see it. I was too blind." walked over to the couch and sat down, resting his elbows on his knees. Your mother, Evelyn, was our head bookkeeper. She was the only person I trusted with the finances. She was brilliant, and she was kind. She used to bring me coffee when I worked late. She treated me like a son. Zoe's eyes widened. She had never heard her mother talk about Darius. One day, Evelyn came to me, Darius continued, his voice cracking slightly. She had found the discrepancies. She had the proof that Trent was stealing. She told me we had to go to the authorities, but I hesitated. I thought I could fix it quietly. I thought I could save the company. I told her to give me a week. Darius looked up at Zoe, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I was a fool. Trent found out she knew. Before I could do anything, Trent framed her. He planted evidence making it look like she was the one stealing. The board fired her. Her reputation was destroyed, and then he bought up her personal debts. He crushed the community center. He ruined her life just to punish me. Zoe felt a tear slip down her cheek. She died of a stress-induced heart attack, she whispered. The doctors said her heart was just too weak from the worry. I know, Darius said, his voice breaking. And I have spent every day since then trying to fix it. I built Vance Vanguard to get enough power to take Trent down. I bought the debt on the center to keep it from being foreclosed. I hired you for the gala because I needed to keep you close, to protect you. The photo, Zoe said, wiping her face. The note on the back, she knew everything. Darius looked down at his glass. She knew that I was too cowardly to act. She knew I was going to let Trent win. That note wasn't a threat, Zoe. It was her disappointment in me. She knew I wasn't strong enough to save her. Room fell into a heavy, emotional silence. Zoe looked at Darius. The Ice King wasn't cold at all. He was just a man who had frozen his heart to survive his own mistakes. She walked over and sat next to him on the couch. She didn't say anything. She just reached out and placed her hand over his. Darius looked at her hand, then up at her eyes. He turned his hand over and gently intertwined his fingers with hers. His grip was warm, solid. I will not let him take the center, Zoe, Darius said fiercely. And I will not let him hurt you, I promise. Before Zoe could reply, Darius's phone buzzed loudly on the coffee table. He picked it up. His face instantly went pale. What is it? Zoe asked, her stomach dropping. It is Trent, Darius said, his voice tight. He put the phone on speaker. Darius, Trent's smooth, mocking voice filled the room. I hope you and your fiancé had a nice ride home. I just wanted to let you know that my security team is currently at the 3rd ward. They are breaking into Zoe's old apartment. Zoe gasped, standing up. My apartment? Why? Because I know Evelyn didn't give the ledger to the police, Trent said over the phone. She hid it, and I know she gave it to her daughter before she died. She told me it was in a blue lockbox. I want the box, Darius. If I don't have it in 1 hour, I am burning that apartment to the ground with everything inside. Line went dead. Zoe's hands flew to her mouth. Her mind raced. A blue lockbox. Her mother had given her a blue lockbox before she passed away. She had told Zoe it was just full of old family photographs. Zoe had left that box in the closet of her 3rd ward apartment. Darius, Zoe whispered, her voice trembling with terror. I have it. I have the ledger. It is in my apartment. Darius stood up, his eyes flashing with a dangerous, deadly light. He grabbed his car keys. Then we are going to get it, Darius said. And then we are going to destroy Trent Sterling. The engine of Darius's black Maybach roared like a wild beast as he tore through the streets of downtown Houston, heading straight for the 3rd ward. The speedometer climbed, but Darius's hands were steady on the steering wheel. His jaw was locked tight, his dark eyes focused on the road ahead. In the passenger seat, Zoe clutched her purse to her chest, her knuckles white. Her mind was racing. The blue lockbox, her mother's final secret, and Trent Sterling's deadly deadline. We are going to make it, Darius said, his voice a low, steady rumble over the hum of the engine. He reached over and briefly squeezed her knee. I promise you, Zoe, we will get the box. Zoe looked at him. The cold, untouchable Ice King was gone. In his place was a man fiercely protective, willing to risk everything for her. Her heart ached with a sudden, overwhelming realization. She wasn't just scared for her mother's legacy anymore. She was terrified of losing the man sitting next to her. Darius, Zoe said softly, her voice trembling, if Trent gets the drive, if he exposes the data, what happens to Vance? His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror before returning to the road. The company will take a massive hit, the stock will plummet, the board might try to oust me, but I will not let him touch you, and I will not let him touch your mother's center. My empire means nothing if it is built on his lies. Zoe felt a tear slip down her cheek. He was willing to lose his company to protect her. The Maybach screeched to a halt in front of Zoe's old apartment building in the 3rd ward. The street was quiet, but the front door of the building was hanging off its hinges. Darius was out of the car in a second. He rushed to Zoe's side, opening her door and pulling her out. "Stay behind me," he ordered. They hurried up the 3 flights of stairs. When they reached Zoe's door, it was wide open. The inside of the apartment was a disaster. Drawers were pulled out, clothes were scattered everywhere, and the small kitchen was trashed. "My things," Zoe gasped, covering her mouth. "Focus, Zoe," Darius said firmly, guiding her inside. "The closet, where's the box?" "Top shelf," she whispered, pointing to the small walk-in closet. Darius rushed over, reaching up. He pulled down a dusty, faded blue metal lockbox. He set it on the bed. "We have it, let's go." "Step away from the box." Voice came from the shadows of the small bathroom. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out. It was Marcus, Trent Sterling's head of security. He held a heavy, black electronic taser in his right hand, aimed directly at Darius. "Marcus," Darius said, his voice deadly calm. He stepped slightly in front of Zoe, shielding her with his broad shoulders. "You are making a very big mistake. Trent is not here to save you when this goes wrong." "Over the box, Vance," Marcus sneered, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Mr. Sterling wants it." "And I am not leaving without it." Zoe's breath hitched. She grabbed the heavy brass lamp from the nightstand, her hands shaking but her resolve hardening. "Leave us alone," she demanded, her voice surprisingly steady. Marcus laughed. "Cute. Put the lamp down, little girl, before I drop you both." Before Marcus could raise the taser, the front door burst open with a massive crash. "Houston police, drop the weapon." 3 uniformed officers flooded into the small apartment, their guns drawn. Right behind them was Jin Park, holding his tablet and looking completely out of breath. "Drop it, Marcus," the lead officer shouted. Marcus looked at the cops, then at Darius's cold, triumphant face. He realized he was completely outmatched. With a heavy sigh, he tossed the taser onto the floor and raised his hands. The officers quickly moved in, slamming him against the wall and snapping handcuffs onto his wrists. Jin walked over, adjusting his glasses. He looked at the trashed apartment and let out a low whistle. "I told you to call me before you played hero, Darius. I had to bribe a police dispatcher to get them here in 5 minutes." "Job, Jin," Darius said, letting out a long breath. He turned to Zoe, his eyes softening. "You okay?" Zoe nodded, dropping the lamp. She looked down at the blue lockbox on the bed. "I have it." But getting the box was only half the battle. What was actually inside, and would it be enough to destroy a billionaire like Trent Sterling? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the truth inside this box is about to shake Houston to its core. Now, let's find out. Back in the safety of the Maybach, parked a few blocks away, Zoe placed the blue lockbox on her lap. Her hands trembled as she undid the rusty latch. She opened the lid. Inside, there were no stacks of cash, no secret weapons. Just a pile of old, faded photographs of Zoe as a baby and a small, silver flash drive. Underneath the drive was a sealed white envelope. Zoe picked up the envelope. Her name was written on the front in her mother's elegant handwriting. She tore it open and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She read it out loud, her voice cracking. "My dearest Zoe, if you are reading this, it means I have passed away and you have found my little secret. I am so sorry I left you with this burden." The flash drive contains the original ledger. It proves that Trent Sterling embezzled millions and framed me. But Trent is smart. He will try to destroy it. So I built a dead man's switch into the drive's encryption. If the file is not uploaded to the Securities and Exchange Commission by midnight on Friday, it will automatically email itself to every major news outlet in the country and the FBI. Zoe looked up, tears streaming down her face. Today is Thursday. The deadline is tomorrow midnight. Darius stared at the small silver drive. "Your mother was a genius," he whispered, a sad smile touching his lips. "She knew Trent would eventually come for you. She left you a shield." "Darius," Zoe said, looking at him, "if we give this to the SEC, it triggers a massive federal investigation. It will freeze Vance Vanguard's assets. The board will panic. You could lose your company." Darius looked out the window at the Houston skyline. The glass towers he had built, the empire he had sacrificed his soul to create. He thought about his mother, who died when he was young. He thought about Evelyn, who died because he was too cowardly to act. He looked back at Zoe, the woman who had brought color back into his black and white world. "Jin," Darius said, his voice firm. Jin looked up from the front seat. "Yeah, boss," call the SEC. "Tell them we have a massive corporate fraud package ready for delivery, and call the Lee family." Tell them the merger is off. Jin's eyes widened. Darius, if you kill the merger and trigger an SEC probe, the stock will tank. You will lose billions. The board will demand your resignation. Them, Darius said smoothly. I am done building my life on fear. Send the email. Jin, Darius was about to sacrifice his entire empire to do the right thing. But would his board of directors let him fall, or would Trent Sterling strike one last blow? Hit that notification bell right now, because the final showdown is here. The next morning, the boardroom at Vance Vanguard headquarters was tense enough to snap a steel cable. The massive mahogany table was surrounded by the company's top executives. At the head of the table sat Mr. Lee, the patriarch of the Lee family conglomerate, looking stern and unimpressed. Sitting across from him was Trent Sterling, wearing a smug, victorious smile. Darius walked into the room. He wasn't wearing his usual armor-like suit. He wore a simple, dark suit, no tie. Zoe walked in right beside him, holding her head high, wearing a sharp red blazer. She looked like a queen. Darius, Mr. Lee said, his voice gruff. You said the merger was off. You said your fiancé was a fraud. Explain yourself. Trent chuckled, leaning back in his chair. I think the stress has gotten to him, Mr. Lee. Darius has always been a bit unstable when things don't go his way. Perhaps it is time for Vance Vanguard to merge with a more stable leadership. My leadership. Darius ignored Trent. He walked to the head of the table and placed the silver flash drive on the mahogany surface. The merger is off, Mr. Lee, because my company was about to merge with a ghost, Darius said, his voice echoing in the large room. Trent Sterling has been embezzling funds from his own shell companies and laundering it through real estate projects, including the Third Ward development. Trent's smile vanished. This is absurd. He is lying. He's just trying to sabotage me because he is losing his mind. I am not lying, Darius said coldly. He pulled out his laptop and plugged in the drive. He turned the screen toward the room. Documents, bank statements, and wire transfers filled the screen. Every illegal transaction Trent had made over the last 10 years was laid bare. The room went dead silent. The board members stared at the screen in shock. It is fake, Trent yelled, standing up, his face red with anger. He fabricated those documents. I will sue you for defamation, Darius. I will ruin you. You won't have to, a new voice said. The boardroom doors opened. 2 federal agents in dark windbreakers walked in, followed by Jin Park. Trent Sterling, the lead agent said, flashing a badge. You are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. The SEC has already frozen your personal assets based on the evidence provided by Mr. Vance. Trent's face turned pale. He looked at the screen, then at Darius. The arrogance completely drained from his body, leaving behind a pathetic, broken man. You destroyed your own stock price. You tanked your company just to get me. I didn't tank my company, Darius said, his voice quiet but powerful. I cured it. Take him away. Agent stepped forward, grabbing Trent by the arms. He didn't fight. He just stared at Darius with pure hatred as they dragged him out of the boardroom. Mr. Lee stood up slowly. He looked at the screen, then at Darius. You took a massive financial hit today, Darius. Your stock is already dropping. Why? Because a company built on a lie is already bankrupt, Darius replied. I would rather lose $1 billion than lose my soul. Mr. Lee stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly the old man smiled. You have your father's fire, Darius, but you have your own honor. The Lee family will still invest. We will restructure the deal, but we are in. Board members erupted into relieved chatter. Jin let out a massive sigh of relief, wiping his forehead. Darius didn't care about the cheers. He turned to Zoe. She was looking at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears of pride. He took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Let's go home, he whispered. Darius had defeated his enemy and saved the day. But he still had one massive failure to fix. He had to tell Zoe the truth about his heart. Would the Ice King finally melt completely? Let's find out. 2 weeks later, the Evelyn Carter Youth Center in the 3rd Ward was unrecognizable. The peeling paint was gone, replaced by a beautiful, warm brick exterior. The broken windows were fixed, and the front yard was filled with vibrant flowers. Inside, the gymnasium was packed with hundreds of people. Music played, kids were laughing, and the smell of delicious food filled the air. Zoe stood near the stage, wearing a simple, elegant yellow dress. She was watching the kids run around, a massive smile on her face. The center was fully funded, thanks to a massive anonymous donation from the Lee family. You look happy, a deep voice said beside her. Zoe turned. Darius was standing there. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wore a crisp white button-down shirt, the sleeves rolled up, and dark jeans. He looked relaxed. He looked human. "I am happy," Zoe said, leaning into his side. "I can't believe we pulled this off." "Pulled it off," Darius corrected gently. "You are the heart of this place, Zoe." "I just provided the bricks." He turned to face her, his dark eyes serious. The music in the gymnasium seemed to fade into the background. The crowd around them quieted down, sensing the shift in the room. Jin Park, standing near the punch bowl, actually pulled out his phone to record. "Zoe," Darius started, his voice soft but steady. "For my entire life, I believed that failure was the ultimate sin. I built walls of glass and steel to keep the world out. I thought if I was perfect, I would never get hurt." He reached into his pocket. Zoe's breath caught in her throat. "But then a clumsy, chaotic, beautiful event planner dropped a tray of champagne on my shoes and shattered my world," Darius continued, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. "You taught me that failure isn't the opposite of success. It is the stepping stone to it. You taught me that a life without risks is a life without love." He pulled out a black velvet box. It wasn't the massive, flashy diamond from the ballroom. It was a simple, elegant vintage ring with a beautiful, warm sapphire in the center. "My fake proposal was a business transaction," Darius said, dropping to one knee right there on the gymnasium floor. The crowd gasped, then erupted into cheers. "But this is real. Zoe Carter, you are my greatest success. Will you marry me? For real this time?" Zoe covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. She didn't care about the crowd. She didn't care about the cameras. She just looked at the man she loved. "Yes," she sobbed, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, Darius, 1,000,000 times yes." Darius slid the ring onto her finger and stood up, pulling her into a deep, passionate kiss. The gymnasium exploded with applause. Jin was cheering the loudest, wiping a fake tear from his eye. And that, my friends, is the truth about Darius and Zoe. They say that success is not final. And failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Darius Vance had all the money in the world, but he was the poorest man in Houston until he learned how to fail. Until he learned that making a mistake doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Zoe Carter thought she was a disaster because things didn't go perfectly, but her imperfections were exactly what saved the man she loved. She taught us that your flaws are not your faults. They are your unique fingerprints on the world. So the next time you mess up, the next time you drop the tray, burn the cake, or fail at something you care about, don't run away. Don't hide. Take a deep breath, laugh at the mess, and try again. Because sometimes the most beautiful things in life only happen when everything goes completely wrong. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe for more incredible stories. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and never be afraid to fail. See you in the next video.